Hello, English students. This lesson is about passive verbs. Using passive voice verbs allows writers to focus on the action itself instead of who is doing the action, which would be the agent. So recognizing passive verbs will help you to better understand what you are reading about. So what are passive verbs? Well, passive verbs are different from active verbs. When the subject in the sentence is the one actually doing the action, then the verb is in active voice. So, for example, Tom baked a cake. Tom is the subject, and Tom is the one who did the verb. He baked the cake. So this is an active verb. It's in the active voice. So what makes this different from passive? When the subject in the sentence is receiving the action that is being done by someone or something else, then the verb is in passive voice. The cake was baked by Tom. So here we have cake is now the subject. And the person who did the baking is not the subject. The agent is not the subject. It's the thing that was acted upon. So the cake was baked by Tom. So this is passive. Tom is still the agent, but he's no longer the subject of the sentence. Here are examples of sentences in both the active and the passive voice. So look at the first one here. It says, linguists analyze written and spoken language. So the linguists are the subject, and they are the ones that actually do the analyzing. That's why this is active. Over here, written in the passive voice, it says written and spoken language is analyzed by linguists. Now we have language as the subject, and then we have the passive verb is analyzed. Here's another example. The forensic linguist analyzed the threatening letter. That would be active. The linguist is doing the analyzing. And in the passive, we have the threatening letter was analyzed by the forensic linguist. More examples. Two different people wrote the letter. That would be active. Here, the letter was written by two different people. That would be passive. Another one, someone had made a phone call. That would be active. Here, a phone call had been made by someone. That's passive. And last, Dan locks the gate every night. That's active. And then here, the gate is locked every night. You could say by Dan, or even if it doesn't say who does the action, it would still be a passive sentence because it's being done to the gate. How can you recognize a passive verb? The passive verb must always have these two parts. Any form of the verb to be and a past participle verb. So here are the to be verbs: be, am, is, are, was, were, been, and being. So one of these is going to be in the passive verb, and then the next word is going to be the past participle verb. These are some examples of past participle verbs. There are many, many other examples because every verb can be put into this form. Most of the regular verbs just simply end with ed, but a lot of very common irregular verbs end with the n at the end. And there are a couple of other forms of past participle verbs that are irregular, such as this one that ends with the ung. If you're not sure about past participle verbs, then you can Google it and you can find a whole list of them, such as this site here. It talks about it and gives you a whole bunch of the verbs in past participle form. And these would be the irregular verbs because most of the regular verbs would just simply have an ed at the end. There's another site that you could go to, and it shows a lot of the different forms of the past participle. You can see that a lot of the irregular verbs end with the n, not all of them though. And then the regular verbs will end with the ed. So you can visit different websites to see the list of the past participle verbs. If it's an irregular verb, it might end a little differently. So that's how you'll know, that's how you'll recognize that the verb is passive, because we have the to be form first, and then we have the past participle form after. Now, the passive verb could also have helping verbs such as have, has, had, may, might, must, will, would, should, or could, and there are actually others also. But if helping verbs are there in the sentence, okay, that is not the way to tell if the verb is passive, because helping verbs are also in active verbs, in the verbs that have active voice. So helping verbs are not indicators. In order to be passive, the verb is required to have a form of to be and a past participle. So don't mix these up with the form of to be. The form of to be is required and past participle. The room had been cleaned yesterday. Now, had is a helping verb. That does not indicate that the verb is passive. It's just there helping. Been is the form of to be. That is required for it to be passive. And cleaned is the past participle. So this verb here, been cleaned, indicates it's passive because it has that to be and the past participle. And this was done to the room. Our team will not be beaten. Will is a helping verb, and not is an adverb. But here we have be, which is our form of be, and beaten, which is a past participle. So this is passive. He may have been given the car from his uncle. May and have are helping verbs. They are irrelevant in recognizing the passive verb. Here we have the form of be, and here we have the past participle. So now we know for sure that this is a passive verb. Your application has been accepted by the company. Has is a helping verb. Been, there's our form of be. Accepted, there's our past participle. So yes, this is a passive verb. A triangle was drawn in the sand with a stick. We have our form of be, and then we have our past participle. So together, this makes a passive verb. Many trees were destroyed in the riots. So here we have our passive verb, were destroyed. There's the form of be, and here is the past participle. Trees is the subject. Trees did not do this. This was done to the trees. Passive verbs always indicate action being done to the subject. The subject receives that action. Now try this and see if you understand the difference between active and passive verbs. Push pause on the video and read through these sentences and write down if the sentence is passive or active. Then come back and check your answers. And here are the answers.